Buonasera a tutte e tutti, siamo molto felici questa sera di presentare in streaming sulla pagina romaeuropa.net il film Dialogue 9 MAXXI di Sasha Waltz. Questo appuntamento nasce in collaborazione con il MAXXI, ma è anche anteprima di un nuovo progetto della Fondazione Romaeuropa, Extract. Si tratta di un palinsesto che ci accompagnerà da gennaio fino a maggio con lo streaming gratuito di alcuni spettacoli estratti dall'archivio di Romaeuropa. Saranno protagonisti alcuni degli artisti più importanti della scena coreografica e teatrale internazionale, per citarne solo alcuni: Emanuel Gat, Enzo Cosimi, Ennio Greco, Virgilio Sieni, Sidi Lerbi Cercaui, ma molti altri ancora. E un po' come faremo questa sera, ogni streaming sarà accompagnato da un talk che vedrà protagonisti gli artisti stessi. Per interrogarci sul tema della memoria, ma anche su alcune delle questioni più urgenti del nostro presente. Tornando a Dialogue 9 Maxi, il film da cui iniziamo, film che nasce dalla performance spettacolo che nel 2009 inaugurò il nuovo museo disegnato da Zadid e che fu possibile proprio grazie alla collaborazione tra Roma Europa e la nuova istituzione, il Maxi. Ne parliamo questa sera con la stessa Sasha Waltz, che ringrazio per la sua presenza, con il direttore generale artistico della Fondazione Romaeuropa, Fabrizio Grifasi, e con il direttore del MAXXI, Hanru. Vediamo un piccolo trailer del film e lascerei poi loro la parola. Grazie.
thank you to Sasha, thank you to Hanru to be together again and to have this little moment that is very important to share, to discuss together. I just would like to start just to remind the people that are connecting and will see the film, how this project started in 2009, because even the story and how it worked is a beautiful story, because a story of a friendship between Sasha Waltz, myself and Romaeuropa, and the friends and the colleague of MAXXI. Jointly, our forces, it was possible in a very few time to build up this opportunity. Because in fact, we started to discuss about this possibility only in June 2009, when Sasha was in the Deutsche Akademie in the Villa Massimo, l'Accademia Tedesca in Rome. She just premiered a few months before a previous dialogue in the Neue Museum in Berlin, just restored by David Schifferbill. And this was the possibility for me to see the work in the Neue Museum. Sasha was spending time in Rome in research in the Deutsche Akademie, and the MAXXI was in a dialogue with Romaeuropa about the possibility to open the museum without the permanent exhibition and without any kind of exhibition in the fall 2009, in order to show to the Roman audience the beautiful architecture by Zaha, but also to introduce the Roman audience to these incredible spaces. During those conversations, the idea came to on my side to ask Sasha, that was in Rome in those days, just to come and to see the MAXXI. She immediately got the invitation. She visited the MAXXI in mid-June, and from that moment, we started to work together with the MAXXI, with the Sasha and her company, and with the Festival Romaeuropa, in order to finalize in simply 3 months and a half a beautiful and very challenging project, because there was at least 40 dancers, included a contemporary music group, and of course the museum that was just finishing and opening with all the technical question that the beautiful huge space has to afford when for the first time open the doors. And the result of this project you are going to see in the film that has been shot at the time by the company of Sasha Waltz, that has been finalized just a couple of months ago, so more than 10 years ago. And now we have the possibility to share this and to tell this story also.
Thank you. Maybe I can say a few words before we turn to Sasha. And I'm also very happy to learn that we are going to refeature this film online, and so it's a great moment also for us, the MAXXI, to be kind of visited by a much larger public. This time, I think it's much more global, even we are in the lockdown situation, right? Nobody can go into the museum physically, but actually everyone can get into the museum online. And thanks to, the streaming online. And this, of course, I came after a few years after the opening of this new building of the museum. And so I didn't have a chance to see the performance myself, but I could imagine actually this collaboration between the MAXXI and Romaeuropa started even before the official inauguration of the building. And that actually gave us a very important momentum to define the, let's say, the genius, the DNA of this building, of this institution, that it's a multi-transdisciplinary platform for creativity, for contemporary creativity. I think Sasha's project intervened in the really the right moment and in the right way to really activate this interaction that further generates the a very important part of the genius of the museum itself. Hence, also I would say for a kind of continuous collaboration between the museum and the festival that makes the Roman city into a very important international platform of creativity. And so I guess, this is not only one performance. I think that it's like the first drop into the lake that created a lot of, waves afterwards. So I think this is extremely beautiful. And another very important thing is actually, I would love to ask Sasha's reaction on, the fact that, I guess, Sasha's creation is very much related to the interaction between dancers and architecture, especially contemporary, modern and contemporary architecture, that provided a very important, not only a set, but also a new way of thinking about the relationship between the body and the space. And also one can go further to the social dimension of the dance itself. So I would like to, ask Sasha, what's the first inspiration for you getting into the building of the MAXXI?
Yes, thank you. I love the image of the lake and, when you throw a stone and it ripples. I think this is a very beautiful image. You want to kind of leave ripples that go on and carry on. And somehow also that the film is shown now, 10 years after, it's another ripple. It's an echo of the time when it was created. And it's due, I have to say, it's due to COVID time also, that we had the time to finish the film. Because in spring 20, now this year, Fabrizio and me, we called, and because it was the anniversary of Romaeuropa this year, and we were supposed to come with an old work of mine, Alle der Kosmonauten, but it was clear it was not possible because there's contact and we are not allowed to touch each other. And so we discussed what can happen. And so we thought about one way can be to show the film.
Yeah, and this is also the 10 years of the MAXXI. So we are actually celebrating the 10th anniversary of the museum, but unfortunately we cannot open the show. We are preparing a series of events and with a very big show called The Story for the Future that is supposed to be open now, but we are still waiting for the right moment to inaugurate it.
Yeah, so I hope you can open the show then once the museums are again allowed to open their doors. I want to answer a bit on your question. So, and a little bit maybe to explain also the idea of the dialogue, because it's the term comes from a project that I did in the early 90s. I was invited to an art institution, visual art institution, actually in Berlin. It's called Künstlerhaus Bethanien. They usually give grants to visual artists, but they are also interdisciplinary. So some musicians or people from other disciplines can join too. And I approached them with this interdisciplinary project called Dialogue, where I wanted to invite musicians, visual artists, and dancers to collaborate on a creation. And this was a series of improvisations with, at the end, showings where we would open the door and present it to a public. And from there on, actually, I created my first work, and the company was founded in consequence of that. And this series, I continued through all my work, all my working time, always changing the approach, but the essence stayed that it's a meeting between the arts, and that it stays very open, and that it's not something that is choreographed and ended, but it's really a meeting, and it's an exploration. And during the time, I started with taking architecture into as another element of meeting with another medium. One can say in architecture there is a very sculptural aspect, but there is it's maybe the high art somehow, because it incorporates many aspects of visual art space, but also of our daily life, because it has to function into society, into into our daily needs. And the first big project that I had was in the Jewish Museum in Berlin, that was opened in 1999 and designed by Daniel Liebeskind. Actually, also a very similar process that Zaha did was doing in the MAXXI. There was also an original historic body of architecture, and then there was a new expansion or prolongation of a building. So the MAXXI also has the historic parts of these military barracks, and then the development and visionary space by Zaha. And so this was the first, let's say, dialogue with architecture, and it was very, very interesting to me, because it questioned also for me the frontality that I usually have to deal with in my theater work, because I had to create a moving public, and I had to guide the public into different perspectives, because the volume, the radius of space I had to offer to the public, not a frontal view, but a very open 360-degree view. And that was a new challenge, but I enjoyed that process very, very much. And out of this research, I developed my opening piece for the Schaubühne am Lehniner Platz that we opened in the year 2000. So from then on, I continued to try to research different spaces. Sometimes it would be historic buildings. For example, I did one project in Venice, the Biblioteca Stampaglia from Carlo Scarpa, which is a very small and precious jewel in the heart of Venice. And it was very different to deal with an historic building, and also the intimacy of the space. I say that because that was maybe the smallest space I had worked in, which gives new challenges to a creator. And then now to the Noise Museum, Fabrizio has already talked about, by David Chipperfield. It took many years, I think it was about 12 years, to do the restoration of that building that was gravely destroyed during the war, and also afterwards in the neglection of the building. And David Chipperfield chose a very different way to approach. So he kept the wounds and the scars from history in the building. And you can really see the layers of time when you visit this space. Also inside, then there are spaces create totally new, like glass, big glass spaces, open halls. So there is a contemporary inside the building, but with the historic shell or the skin remaining. And this was an enormous opportunity because the building has many different levels, and I would have to guide the public through all these different etages to get an image of the whole building. And my approach was that I wanted to bring the people through the imaginary exponents that will be shown there in the future. Knowing that Nofretite would be shown in one of these spaces, I created one scene on the death cult, the Egyptian death cult, and how they preserved the people, the dead people. And we created kind of a ritual in this space. Always I worked with live music in this building, so the musicians were part of the promenade or the parkour through the building. And so then when Fabrizio brought me to the MAXXI, that was almost finished, I would say, because when we were working in Noise Museum, there were still workers inside on the walls, you know, like cleaning and making. And MAXXI was already quite far, but there was this energy of finishing a big architectural work, which is a very exciting moment. And I remember that even few days before we opened the performance, the entrance with the big desk, this incredible sculpture desk, it was not finished yet, and they were still working on it. So we could really feel the finishing procedures and participating in that. And we have a term in Germany, or in German, it's called Einweihung. It means it's kind of almost a ritualistic word. Die Weihe, I lost the English translation, but it's a celebration. It's a religious celebration to open a new venue. And I feel this very special moment when we are entering an architecture, because we enter with our bodies that are vulnerable. They're not gonna last as long as these buildings will last, because they will all be there when we are gone. But we enter and we bring our vulnerability, but also our soul into this space. And so for me, it's always a big honor to be able to, to create something in this space. And so what is also challenging for me, answering to you, Hanru, when I enter a building, I cannot change anything. I have to take the building, the walls, the stairs, the colors, exactly how they are. I cannot say, well, like how I would enter in a theater. I want to put the wall here. I want to make it smaller. I want to change the front to here. You go into a theater, and that's the fun and the fascination of theater, that you can transform it however you want. And with every artist that enters a theater space, he will transform this space into his world. But in architecture, you have a definition, and this cannot be changed. And I love this limitation, because then my language has to answer. And so this is the dialogue. I have to answer, and the walls, even they're static, they will answer us. And so we go and listen with our bodies to energy fields, to visual lines, where are powerful see-through angles, you know, perspectives, depths from up into the ground, you know, trying to find what are interesting viewpoints. How do I want to guide a public to see this building through the choreography that I'm creating with the dancers? And as we know, Saha, it carries us in a very organic way into the higher levels, through stairs, through different choices, but everything is connected. Everything is somehow, my feeling, also when I remember now, it's perceived almost as one space. There are only, I would say, maybe the spaces that were meant for offices and maybe educational spaces, they are isolated and they're not connected. But the exhibition space, I felt they're all connected, and they create one breathing area. So my idea was to start on the bottom. I did a big opening on the bottom with a women dance, very, I would say, referring to the ritual also, with a drum work from Xenakis for solo percussion, and then slowly bringing the public up step by step. So from the ground level to go to the first level and further, always having the opportunity and the challenge to see different things at the same time, and to make choices what you want to see and what you cannot see, to accept that you're gonna miss something.
This, what exactly you were explaining at the end of your intervention is one of the things that touched me so much, because you were putting me, and I think all the audience, in the choice zone, in a zone in which one were able to choose his own parcours in the museum, and in the meantime also confronted us to the multiplicity of the actions that are happening in the same time in different spaces. Sometimes you can see, you were able to see, I do remember perfectly, the multiplicity of the action in the different spaces, because also the architecture of the museum was helping this. And in the meantime, this gave a beautiful emotion of it like to be in a flow and in a flow between the possibility of choosing where to go and the possibility also to remain in this in the middle of those different actions happening in the same time, no? Especially when there was spaces of the museum in which different rooms were crossing that. And this was very strong. It was something that also questioned us on the relation between the artist, the spaces, and the spectator, the multiplicity of the point of views that we know in our time is something very strong. Also the multiplicity of the forms that happens, because you were mentioning the performances, you were mentioning the music, the architecture like a living body. This is something that is very strong and in a certain way define our experience in this time.
I would like to add something, because when I visited the first time, you know, this space that is so white, and it was completely innocent. There was this, maybe after I had visited so many churches and seen so many religious artwork, I was very obsessed by the idea of the angels. And so when I arrived there, I wanted to create these human angels. We are the angels. And also this being elevated, being in the air between the earth and the sky. And so this was my center image that was really unique, and the first time I did it only for the MAXXI. And that was in the big long hall, all the flying extended bodies, and one special flying dancer. And you have to imagine, he was in the entrance. It's very high. I don't, maybe Hanru, you know how high it is, but it must be like, I don't know, maybe
it's about 50, I would say almost 20.
So 15, 20 meters. And he was extended from there in the middle of that space. I think also I was very, you know, that he allowed to be there, the dancer. He must have also stepped over his fear. But it was very beautiful to see alive a human body in this elevated state. That was kind of the finishing image. So this was a unique creation. And one other scene that is almost the opposite, which is an execution scene. It's a scene that comes really from me as an association also to the history of the building, that it was military barracks, and recalling that also, the violence and the potential of killing. And these extremes were created specifically for this museum. And then a lot of other elements were, it was almost like a retrospective through my work from the year 2000. And so we could go through different periods, and then there were new elements created. There was another religious reference that I created. There was a human bell. It was kind of a body was being brought up as if you, and in the end it swings right and left like a bell in a church tower, but it's a human body. So there were some very images that I think were echoing my time in Rome, and then transformed into a contemporary physical language. And otherwise, there was a lot of also incredible contemporary music performed there, that really in these spaces could, you know, they were, as the spaces were connected, it was very interesting. You could come from one sound sphere, walking through that sound sphere and entering into another musical sound universe. I think that was also quite a unique experience for a public. And I chose a lot of contemporary music from Chelsea to Haas, to Xenakis. I had Ligeti, Wiesenfeld. So there was really quite a variety of contemporary music, specifically string music, but there was also trumpet, 2 trumpets and percussion.
Yeah, it's an incredibly rich and beautiful interpretation of, you know, of the building through your let's say, creation of the narrative. I think that helps us also to understand better what we can do in the building, in fact, even 10 years after. And I have a question, very quick question, that about the film. Apparently the film is another language, that it's typically, you know, a film, it's a kind of documentary, if it goes to a dance, right? Of a dance or theater, and film, how do you actually consider intention of a documentary? How do you define that from the beginning, and how do you actually end up having the final product?
Yeah, this is actually a difficult question, because with every filming of a dance, you ask these questions. Like in the theater, do you just show the performance live, or do you enter and create a film out of it? It's always a choice. I think the museum already was so visual, and it brought us into another space through the architecture, that the possibility to do less of a documentation was easier, I think, because the whole visuality, it was so compact. No matter which direction you choose, you had a great angle, and it was not an off stage or an on stage. It was always you were, yeah, well, you see it in the film. There are situations where you sometimes see public, and then you don't see public. So there was an undecided way. Can we film it only without public? We didn't have enough time to do that, extra performances. So we combined the performance and the shots that were without public. But I think also this, you call it documentary, this aspect is also interesting, because the audience is also part of the performance in this situation. Absolutely. It is in every theater. We know that now, because we are nothing without our public. But in this specific way, the public is also choreographed in a certain way, because they're walking, they create different forms according to how they watch and how I guide them. So let's say in the end, when everybody is on the ground floor, but the public is still in this beautiful balcony on top, round, looking down, plus a big circle on the bottom, it is part of the performance. So it's, what is it? Is it a document, or is it showing the choreography itself? It's a mixed form. I mean, for sure, we didn't, we did it like as we filmed it, we did it like a document, because we had no, like, let's say, collaboration with a film like Arte or ZDF or RAI. We just did it because we thought this is something that will never come back, and we want to document it. Yeah, so it is in a way a document. And that's also why we were not completing, because we didn't have the money to finalize the cuts. And so now, thanks to Romaeuropa and the MAXXI, this year, with the 10th anniversary, this film was created. I'm very thankful for that. I want to add one little thing, because I spoke about the contemporary composers, but There was also creation, because I invited Hans-Peter Kuhn, who is a musician who does light and sound installations, and that I had collaborated already in the Jewish Museum. And he did an overall installation, sound installation through the whole museum. That was sort of the ground and the connection of all the spaces. And then on top, we had these different pieces of contemporary compositions with the string quartet and trumpet, just to understand, because when you hear the film, you hear these very subtle electronic sounds, almost as if the space itself has a tone, has music.
Sasha, you were mentioning the audience and how the audience was involved in the performance. And because we already presented with the MAXXI 2 times the film, the mid-September, when you came for the opening of Romaeuropa in the Cavea of the auditorium with this beautiful program, Terra, that was including the Rite of Springs, the closing of the Bolero, and the opening with the I Can Breathe. In the MAXXI, we showed a couple of times already the movie, unfortunately for a very small amount of people because the distanciation. And there were in the audience that came to see the movie mid-September, some of the people that were part of the audience in 2009. And it was really beautiful. At the end of the projection, they came to me and to the people of the team of the Romaeuropa and the MAXXI, to thanking them, and also because they recognize themselves 10 years after. And in a certain way, they reenacted, they lived again how much strong it was that moment at the distance of the time. And now, if you agree, because we were, of course, on recording our meeting, because in fact we cannot meet each other. We met in mid-September, but just also to know what are you doing now? What are you doing with the company in Berlin? How is the situation? And also ask Andrew what is preparing in this moment, because all the Italian cultural institutions are closed. Romaeuropa was obliged to finish and close before his own program. Now we are planning this online program, but I think that Andrew was working at a very important project. So I think it is also very important that probably at the end of our conversation, we just remind that we are still there and how we are trying to face this new lockdown, if it is a light lockdown in a certain way.
Sasha.
Okay, thank you. Yes, for us, the performance of Terra Sacra in Rome, in the auditorium at open air, it was for us sort of the highlight of our year, I would say. Again, in another building, I want to really say this is Renzo Piano's building. And again, we had the opportunity to do some little interventions into or with the architecture that was very beautiful and challenging for me. And I didn't also make the connection until I was thinking again about the MAXXI, that I also used the string quartet of Georg Friedrich Haas in the MAXXI 10 years ago. And I opened this year the Romaeuropa with I Can't Breathe of Georg Friedrich Haas, that was in memorial to Eric Garner, that he wrote as a reaction or as a loud reminder against racism. And so after this time, there was this small window where we could work and where theaters and museums were open. And I think we were all breathing and trying, even though the social distancing was very strong. So we had to rework also all the pieces that I was originally doing with contact. I had to rework or created something new like the bolero with distance. And I did another performance afterwards outdoor because we were trying to find new venues where the public could move more freely. And because in the inside it was very, very reduced. And so I was working on a former outdoor swimming pool in nature. And I used music from Nino Rota. And these were very old, kind of neglected building parts from the 70s. So also like, you know, when you go in a swimming pool, you go down and or you jump into the water. So it had very, very beautiful, nostalgic memories of our childhood somehow. And the public could move very freely because it was in nature. And I played again the bolero in nature, under the trees, with the lake behind and like boats passing by. So it was very beautiful also. And it was very nice also because it was not so much in the center of Berlin, but a little bit outside. So people from the local area that used to go to this swimming pool in summer, they came and they also had like memories, and they were saying, oh, we're so happy that something is happening again. So it has had a very local feeling. And I think this will be our strategy also for the future, to find new locations that are not necessarily traditional theater spaces, but get into unexpected new venues and create also new public through that. Especially open air and nature will be an important part for me, because also we feel more free. We don't have the strict breathing limitation of the indoor venue. And then we had the opportunity, and this is for me also in COVID times, we all react very spontaneously and very short notice, because we all change our schedule very fast. And we have plan A, plan B, plan C, and wait, what are the politicians saying? And then, okay, after we have to go to plan C. And so, for example, I had the opportunity also to participate in a film project. Again, I think it was due to Romaeuropa. Alessandro Michele from Gucci came to see the performance. And then he gave me a call and said, do you want to participate in this project that I'm doing for his new presentation? So we participated in this episode, fourth episode, which was also very fun, I have to say. And I met very interesting artists to collaborate, like Silvia Calderoni. I met, and so they are unexpected.
And Gus Van Sant.
And Gus Van Sant, and Christopher Doyle, the director of photography. It was very unexpected, wonderful, creative meetings. And coming back from Rome, again, it was clear that all our performance will be canceled in December. We were supposed to have quite a big series in Volksbühne with our latest creation, and it was canceled. So I decided to start a new creation and to go to the studio and work on a new creation. So I have been working on one of the earliest pieces of minimal music by Terry Riley for the last weeks. And we decided we're gonna use the time in the theater, even though there's no public. We're gonna make the film of the performance that was supposed to happen. So we make a film of Rauschen and really take all the time, so very calm, and we do a very nice film so that at some point the public can see that performance even if we are not performing. And we do live streams now. For example, we were supposed now in this weekend, we're supposed to do improvisations. Actually, my dialogues, but in the theater with 4 different electronic musicians that I invited that have never worked before. And we are doing live streams. So what I decided is I don't want to cancel anymore and pay the people for something that is not happening, but I want to work and I transform whatever we were supposed to do in something that we can experience and that we can still share. So is it a film, is it a live stream, is it a rehearsal, but we keep going. And I develop now for example, with this new project, I develop tutorials. So we are filming the phrases and the figures that we create. And we make like a clear tutorial. We explain what we're doing. There are 53 figures. And I will send them out to quite a lot of dancers from the independent scene. And I will ask them to learn them. And then they will send it back to me. And I can pay them then also, as if they're with me in the studio, but they don't have to be live in the studio with me. And at some moment when the situation gets better, we all come together and then we can perform it together. So we just try to find new ways. And I have to say, I'm very inspired by finding solutions. And before we were a bit almost, it was getting so heavy and people got so sad. And I was so worried with all the independent dancers not having work, because I collaborate with so many people from the independent scene, not only dancers, but also technicians, you know, lighting designers, musicians, and to offer work. And now I feel we kind of have a strategy and we want to keep going. We just want to keep working. And I think I felt almost insulted by the way, if we're always going to get paid for something we are not doing. I understand that it's good that there's a support, but you know, we want to work, you know. So I feel, yeah, it touches my. I rather want to be stimulated by the challenge, you know, than to be passive, just waiting that they allow us to open the theater again. So that's my situation at the moment. And I think in general, our mood is positive, and we have to go through this pandemic. We have to accept it. We cannot fight it. We have to go with it. And it's not, I'm not for ignoring it. I'm for respecting it. I have to say, my father, who is 80, getting 85 this year, he had COVID, and my son had COVID. And they were both super careful. My father almost never went out of the house because he was very afraid to get it. And he's an asthmatic person. And the way you get it is so tricky that it is very, 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 very dangerous. So I totally respect the rules. We always work with social distancing. We are having regularly every week, we're doing tests. So without that, I could not work. We just accept it. If we want to work, we do tests. So we invest the money. We are doing pool tests, which is PCR tests, but in pool. So we can go up to 10 people. And this is something we can afford. And they are very secure. We have until now already found 2 cases also. So, so we feel also safe. So before we start working, we do a test, and then we go into 1 week of work, and then we test again. So that's kind of our strategy for the moment, and we will keep doing that until the times get better.
Thank you for this energy, Sasha, because what you just told us is something very strong, is something also beautiful. And knowing you, well, it's also for us something very important to know that you are doing all those projects that, because we share the same sadness, we share the same, and I think everybody sharing the same sadness. So the fact that you, the artist, you are there, you are rehearsing, you are developing new project that, let's say, the people could also see together, because we are going to support the streaming of the next coming project, and we will work again together. This is a very positive sign, because of course, we do not know when the situation is going to change, because all the artists and all the people are afraid about this. But this is another time, like you did in September, a very courageous and brave gest and signal, exactly like you did in September, when you accepted to come with 21 dancers for 1 week and take the challenge to stay in Rome and to give us this beautiful 3 nights in the opening Cavea. So thank you. Andrew.
Well, oh, thank you. So I'm very much moved by, not only the passion, the enthusiasm, and also the creativity that Sasha and her colleagues managed to continue to develop a lot of incredible activities. I think at the MAXXI, we are trying, also to sustain our creative practice, and not only like many other museums that everyone is going online today. We have a incredibly active online program of talks, presentations, and debates, and basically every day we have something new online, and to provide it kind of to keep the lifeline of the institution going on. And also behind this online stage, actually the whole team is still mobilized very much, either working from distance or in the office. We kind of shift between smart working and non-smart working to arrive at a certain kind of creative result. And in the meantime, we try very hard to implement the programs of exhibitions, and using really the most creative possibilities to realize them. So before the second lockdown, like a few weeks ago, we had the new exhibition of the MAXXI Bulgari Prize open, together with the a new acquisition presentation in the collection called Santa Margina, and also having the archive, the donation of the archive of Boato to be presented. And that actually would be, of course, if the museum is going to be open again, would be coming back. And in the meantime, we are actually setting up 3 major exhibitions, which are very, very interesting. One is actually a small but incredibly innovative project by Navin Navanchaiku, who's a Thai artist of Indian origin. And he came to Rome last year, actually more than 1 year ago, to research and meet with the incredible, rich community of Indian, Pakistani, and Bangladesh communities in Rome and also outside of Rome. He visited, hundreds of people and then created a project that consisting of a large painting and a film, and to show his interaction, his dialogues with this community, to tell a story which is incredibly beautiful, strong, but hardly anyone knows it. From the time when the Indian young people were brought into Europe to Italy to fight for Italy during the First World War, and then the whole way down, how they actually continue to go back and forth between the two parts of this world, and then in the 60s up to now, how much these so-called immigration communities contribute to the construction of the country, and how they settled, how they developed their own cultures and so on, and connected to a global circulation of this population through Dubai, through Middle East to here, and it's an incredibly strong project, which is very small, but in the meantime, it can be a new meeting point, as you said, going to somewhere else. And actually, this is inside the museum. We're going to create a kind of meeting place for the community to come into the museum, which is probably opening up an incredibly new possibility to welcome a new public. And so that's and then the artist is commissioned to do this project, and then he would donate the painting to the collection of the museum. And then and this is a very small project but very strong. And then we have an exhibition of Aldo Rossi, and a kind of larger retrospective of the famous Aldo Rossi's design. And this project would also be in collaboration with the Triennale in Milan. So the exhibition after in the MAXXI would be traveling to Milan and hopefully going somewhere else in the world, as we always do. And then besides this, I'm actually working with our team to setting up now a very large project called the Story for the Future, which is a kind of retrospective remapping of the programs of the MAXXI for the last 10 years and even before, how the creation of this program has been reflecting the interaction between contemporary creativity and the change of the world, and the 5 major themes: the relation between the city and the museum, the creation of kind of new Italian scene based on the idea of the multiplicity, the multitude, and then how actually different words encounter in a place like the MAXXI, with exhibitions of global figures and also collective exhibitions, and then especially the interaction between Italy and the Mediterranean scene. And then how actually our program, from art, design, architecture to public program, education, and so on, confront with the different challenges of reality in the world, from economy, globalization of capitalism, to the crisis of democracy, the crisis of environment, to the everyday actions, how we try to solve, create a better condition of living and invent more pleasure out of a lot of constraints. And then at the end, we also have quite a fundamental question about innovation and spirituality. How much, we, through the innovation, through progress of technology, we are transforming our identity. How we need to continue to question who we are as human beings. And so these 5 themes provided a kind of framework to the whole research. And then the exhibition is structured based on a very classical linear timeline on the one hand. On the other hand, a very, very encyclopedia kind of atlas, somehow referring to, you know, the legacy of, for example, Avi Wabu or Anteprima and so on and so forth, and to remap our knowledge and to provide a new beginning for a further research. So in this context, the museum would become a kind of large laboratory of, you know, research on knowledge, education, exchange, and so on. And besides that, also we have a kind of interactive installation that to tell the story through the archive of the museum, in interviews with artists, curators, and designers, architects, and so on. And also one very particular thing is to interview our own staff, to tell their private stories, their private reactions to the history of this 10 years, how they think of their experience, what is most valuable for them, and then what's their projection for the future. So that forms a really interesting kind of oral history that you would never read in papers. And then you would never even read that online because, you know, you have to be there. So this is incredibly beautiful. And the exhibition is designed by Inside Outside, which is a design company in Amsterdam run by Petra Bless, who has been working with Rem Koolhaas very closely for many, many projects. And so the architecture of the building is being transformed into something really surprising. And I'm not going to tell you what it is. I really think it's very, very important that people should come back in the building, even with certain distance, but they should come back, find themselves in this new immersive world. That is, I think we desperately need to to create a new world that is looking like a paradise in a time that paradise is almost impossible.
You're right. We really need this, and it is also beautiful to hear your projects and how the MAXXI is approaching this time, is rethinking the time, because I think this is one of the major questions for cultural institutions, for artists, for the companies, that to be in our time, it means that we have to rethink completely the way we are in our time.
Absolutely.
We have to rethink to our practice. We have to rethink the way we organize our work, and probably the lives, our personal life too. And we will think also to have a completely different approach, the way we are thinking the development in the future. Probably we have been in the last years in a huge pressure in personal life, in professional lives, that also in the cultural world has been very strong. And probably we need a much more ecological and let me say a slow time to think about. So all those ideas, all those projects by Sasha, by you, and the colleagues that each of us is discussing with other artists, we are constantly in contact, are going exactly in this direction. And I think this is also a very important responsibility. Let me say it's a very kind of a social responsibility we have in terms of being present now and in the next future in a completely different way we did in the past. So thank you very much. And I give now again the floor to Matteo to the closing of our talk.
Grazie, sì, solo poche parole per ricordarvi che potrete vedere il film Dialogue 9 sulla pagina romaeuropa.net/streaming, trovate il link qui in basso nei commenti. e che il film sarà disponibile on demand fino al 31 dicembre. Io ringrazio Sasha Waltz per la sua presenza, ringrazio il direttore del MAXXI Hou, il direttore generale artistico della Fondazione Romaeuropa Fabrizio Grifasi, e appuntamento a gennaio con Extract. Grazie.